against the kitchen floor. Elena. Richard froze in the doorway, still holding the silver teapot in his hand. Elena stared at him silently. Her breathing looked uneven, weak, fragile, exactly how he wanted her to look. "Oh my God," Richard said, rushing toward her. "Are you okay?" But Elena didn't answer immediately. Her eyes drifted to the tea spreading across the marble tiles. Then slowly, she smiled, and Richard never noticed. Because 3 seconds earlier, she had switched the cups. For 92 nights, Richard Holloway believed he was poisoning his wife. Every evening at exactly 9:15 p.m., he prepared chamomile tea with 2 drops of a colorless toxin hidden inside a small medical bottle he kept locked in his office safe. He watched her drink it. He watched her grow weaker. Or at least, he thought he did. What Richard never realized was that Elena Holloway discovered his plan 3 months earlier. And since that night, the wrong person had been drinking the poison. If you enjoy psychological revenge stories where karma strikes slowly and painfully, hit the like button now and subscribe. Because this story only gets darker from here. 3 months earlier, rain hammered against the windows of the Holloway mansion while Elena folded laundry upstairs. Richard was downstairs on the phone. At first, she wasn't listening, until she heard him laugh. Not his normal laugh. This one sounded cold, cruel. "She doesn't suspect anything," he said. Silence. Then another laugh. "The dosage is small enough. By the time doctors notice anything, it'll look natural." Elena froze. Her hands tightened around one of Richard's shirts. Downstairs, his voice lowered. "I'm telling you, Amanda. 3 more months, and everything belongs to us." Amanda, his assistant. The woman Elena had defended countless times whenever people accused her husband of cheating. Elena slowly stepped toward the staircase. Her heart pounded harder with every word. "I already changed the insurance policy," Richard continued. "Once Elena's gone, we disappear to Italy." Elena nearly lost her balance. Gone. Not divorce. Not separation. Gone. She covered her mouth before a sound escaped. Then she heard footsteps moving toward the stairs. Elena rushed back into the bedroom just before Richard appeared. "You okay?" he asked casually. She forced a smile. "Just tired." Richard walked closer and kissed her forehead. That kiss almost broke her. Because for 15 years, she had loved this man completely. And now she knew he wanted her dead. That night, Elena didn't sleep. At 2:14 a.m., she sat in the dark staring at her husband beside her. Peaceful, comfortable, like a man without guilt. She wanted to scream. She wanted to call the police. But something stopped her. No proof. No evidence. And Richard was smart. Careful. Powerful. He owned half the city through his investment firm. Politicians shook his hand at charity events. Judges played golf with him on weekends. If she accused him without proof, he would destroy her. Or worse. So Elena waited. And the next evening, she saw the tea. Richard carried 2 cups into the living room with a smile that now terrified her. "Chamomile," he said softly. "Helps you sleep." Elena's stomach twisted. She watched him place both cups on the table. One closer to her. One closer to himself. Then Richard's phone buzzed. He glanced down at the screen. That tiny distraction lasted maybe 2 seconds. But it was enough. Elena switched the cups. Smoothly. Quietly. Richard picked up the poisoned cup himself. And drank. That single moment changed everything. Because Elena made a decision most people never would. She wasn't going to run. She wasn't going to confront him. She was going to let him continue. Night after night. Cup after cup. Until the truth destroyed him. The changes started slowly. Week 2. Richard rubbed his temples constantly during breakfast. "These migraines are killing me," he muttered. Elena looked up from her coffee. "Maybe you should see a doctor." "I'm fine." But he wasn't. Week 4. Richard forgot the name of one of his senior executives during a board meeting. Week 6. He began waking up drenched in sweat. Week 7. His hands started shaking. Still, he continued poisoning the tea. Every night. Like a ritual. And every night, Elena switched the cups. One evening, Richard stared at himself in the mirror too long. "You think I look pale?" he asked. Elena remained calm. "A little. I've lost 12 pounds. Stress maybe." Richard frowned. "No. Something feels wrong." For the first time, fear touched his voice, and Elena almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then came Amanda. Elena met her unexpectedly at Richard's office charity gala. Tall, young, perfect smile. Amanda approached her confidently. "Elena, You look exhausted, she said sweetly. The audacity nearly made Elena laugh. Instead, she smiled politely. Life's been stressful. Amanda tilted her head sympathetically. I'm sure Richard is taking good care of you. Elena looked directly into her eyes. Yes, she said quietly. He's very dedicated lately. Amanda's smile flickered, just slightly, and Elena realized something important. Amanda didn't know. She thought Elena was still drinking the poison. That realization changed the game, because now Elena understood. Richard had told nobody the details, not even his mistress, which meant when everything collapsed, he would stand alone. Halfway through the gala, Richard suddenly dropped his wine glass. Crash. The entire ballroom turned. Richard grabbed the table for balance. You okay? Someone asked. I'm fine, Richard snapped. But his face had gone ghost white. Elena moved toward him carefully. Richard, for one brief second. Their eyes locked, and Elena saw genuine panic. Not anger, not manipulation. Fear. Deep, uncontrollable fear. Because somewhere inside himself, Richard finally realized something terrifying. The poison was working, just not on the person he intended. Narrator. And this is where the story becomes dangerous. Because desperate people make reckless decisions. And Richard Holloway was becoming desperate. If you're still watching, comment, swap below. Because the next part of this story is where the hunter slowly realizes he became the prey. Later that night, Richard sat alone in his office while Elena stood outside the half-open door unnoticed. Inside, he poured trembling whiskey into a glass. Then opened the safe. Elena's chest tightened. He removed the small poison bottle carefully. But instead of smiling confidently like before, Richard stared at it in horror. What the hell, he whispered. His hand shook violently. Then he pulled out his phone and dialed Amanda. We need to stop, he said immediately. Amanda sounded confused even through the speaker. What are you talking about? I said stop. You're almost free, Richard. No. His breathing became uneven. Something's wrong. Elena's pulse quickened. Amanda lowered her voice. Did she find out? Richard answered too quickly. No. But Elena noticed something important. For the first time in months, Richard sounded uncertain. And uncertainty was the beginning of collapse. Richard stopped sleeping after that night. Elena noticed it immediately. At 3 a.m., he wandered through the hallways like a ghost, checking locks twice, staring out windows, jumping at small sounds. The confident billionaire who once controlled boardrooms with a single sentence now looked terrified of his own shadow. And still, every night at 9:15, he made the tea. Narrator. Most people think evil men are fearless. They're not. They're confident only when they believe they control the outcome. The moment control disappears, fear takes over. And Richard Holloway was losing control fast. 3 days later, Richard collapsed during a meeting. The sound of his body hitting the conference room table silenced 12 executives instantly. Call 911. Elena, someone shouted through the phone. By the time she reached the hospital, doctors were already running tests. Richard sat upright in the hospital bed, pale and furious. I'm fine, he snapped at the physician. The older doctor adjusted his glasses carefully. Mr. Holloway, your blood work shows unusual toxicity levels. Elena remained silent beside the doorway. Toxicity, Richard repeated. We need additional tests. Richard forced a laugh. So now I'm poisoned? The doctor didn't smile back. Something is definitely affecting your system. Richard's face drained of color. Elena watched him carefully, because she realized something horrifying in that moment. He genuinely believed someone else was poisoning him. That night, Richard installed security cameras throughout the mansion. Elena pretended not to notice. You think someone's breaking in? She asked casually during dinner. Richard barely touched his food. Just being careful. With what? His eyes lifted slowly toward hers. For once in your life, Elena, stop asking questions. The bitterness in his voice surprised even him. Silence filled the room. Then Elena nodded softly. Okay. But inside, she was beginning to understand something deeper. Richard didn't feel guilt. He felt fear. There was a difference. The next evening, Elena entered his office while he showered. She moved quickly, carefully. Inside the desk drawer, beneath financial files, she found it. A second insurance policy. $30 million. Beneficiary, Richard Holloway. Her hands tightened. Then she found photographs. Pictures of Amanda. Hotel reservations. Flight confirmations to Florence, Italy. Everything planned. Every detail prepared while she still slept beside him every night. Elena felt something inside her harden completely. Not sadness anymore. Not heartbreak. Just clarity. Later that evening, Richard carried the tea into the living room again. His hands visibly trembled now. "You should drink first tonight," Elena said calmly. Richard froze. "What?" "The tea," she repeated softly. "You first." For a moment, pure panic crossed his face. Then he forced a laugh. "You think I poisoned you or something?" Elena held his gaze, long enough to make him uncomfortable. Then she smiled. "I didn't say that." Richard picked up the cup. His hand shook badly enough for tea to spill onto the saucer. And Elena saw it. The exact second suspicion entered his mind. Not suspicion about himself. Suspicion about her. Because suddenly Richard began asking himself a question he should have asked 3 months earlier. What if Elena knew? That night, he waited until Elena slept. Then quietly entered the kitchen. He examined both teacups under bright light, like a detective studying evidence. His breathing became heavier. Then he checked the security footage. But Elena had been careful. Every swap happened during moments too subtle for cameras to catch clearly. A phone buzz. A turned shoulder. A dim lighting angle. Nothing obvious. Nothing provable. Still, Richard kept watching the footage until sunrise. Obsessing. Searching. Terrified. The following morning, Amanda arrived unexpectedly at the mansion. Elena opened the door herself. Amanda forced a smile. "Is Richard home?" "He's upstairs." Amanda hesitated. "You don't look well." Elena almost laughed at the irony. Neither did Richard anymore. "You should come in," Elena said politely. Amanda entered slowly. And for the first time, Amanda looked nervous around her. "Good." Upstairs, Elena overheard the argument through the cracked office door. "This is getting out of hand," Amanda whispered sharply. Richard slammed something onto the desk. "You think I don't know that? She's still alive." Elena's expression remained perfectly calm. Amanda continued. "You said this would take weeks." Richard's voice dropped lower. "I know. And now you're the one getting sick?" Silence. Heavy silence. Then Amanda asked the question Richard feared most. "Did you mess up the dosage?" "No." "Then what's happening?" Richard didn't answer. Because deep down, he already knew. He just couldn't accept it yet. That evening, Richard stared directly at Elena during tea. Longer than usual. Too long. "You've changed," he said quietly. Elena looked up from her book. "People change. You seem happier lately. That bothers you." Richard leaned back slowly. "No," he lied. But it absolutely bothered him. Because victims aren't supposed to become calmer while dying. Victims become weaker. Afraid. Dependent. Elena was becoming stronger instead. And Richard finally noticed. This is the moment predators hate most. The moment they realize the person they underestimated is no longer afraid of them. 2 nights later, Richard made a mistake. A massive one. He drank from the poisoned cup before Elena could switch it. Just one sip. Then he noticed her watching him. The room froze. Richard slowly lowered the cup. Elena remained perfectly still. And suddenly, everything became clear between them. No confession. No accusation. Just truth. Richard's voice came out almost as a whisper. "How long?" Elena tilted her head. "How long what?" His breathing sharpened. "How long have you known?" Elena closed her book carefully. "About Amanda?" Richard said nothing. "Or about the poison?" she added softly. The silence that followed felt endless. Then Richard stood abruptly. "You're insane." "Am I? You think I'd kill my own wife?" Elena smiled faintly. "You already tried." Richard's face twisted with panic and rage simultaneously. "You have no proof." Elena stood now too. "You're right." That answer unsettled him more than any accusation could have. Because she sounded calm. Certain. Like someone who no longer needed proof. Richard backed away slowly. "You switched the cups." Elena didn't answer. "You switched the damn cups." His voice cracked violently. Finally, the truth shattered him. And the terrifying part? Elena felt relief. Not revenge. Relief. Because she was tired of pretending. "You poisoned yourself for 3 months," she said quietly. Richard grabbed the edge of the counter for support. "You evil bitch." Elena's eyes darkened instantly. "Careful," she whispered. "You taught me this game." Richard lunged suddenly, knocking the tea tray onto the floor. Porcelain exploded everywhere. "You think this is funny?" he shouted. Elena didn't flinch. "No, I think it's justice." Richard's chest heaved violently. Then something unexpected happened. He started crying. Not loudly. Not emotionally. Just broken, terrified tears. "I'm dying," he whispered. And for one brief second, Elena almost pitted him again, until she remembered the insurance papers, the hotel reservations, the conversations, the lies. "No," she said coldly. "You're just facing what you planned for me." Narrator. But Richard Holloway still had one final card to play, because men like him rarely go down quietly, and what he did next nearly destroyed both of them. If you've made it this far, hit subscribe right now, because the final part of this story contains the moment everything explodes and the ending nobody saw coming. The next morning, Elena woke to police officers at the mansion. Richard stood behind them. Calm again, controlled again, dangerous again. Officer Daniels stepped forward carefully. "Mrs. Holloway, your husband has accused you of attempting to poison him." Elena slowly turned toward Richard, and Richard smiled. For the first time in weeks, he looked confident again, because he believed he had found a way out. The officer placed a small evidence bag onto the dining table. Inside it sat the poison bottle from Richard's office safe. Elena stared at it silently. Officer Daniels cleared his throat. "Your husband claims he discovered this hidden among your belongings this morning." Elena looked directly at Richard. He didn't blink, didn't look away. 15 years together. And suddenly she realized something terrifying. Richard had probably been lying long before the poison ever started. Some people don't become monsters overnight. They simply wait for the right moment to remove the mask. "I think we should all sit down," Officer Daniels said carefully. Richard nodded immediately. "Yes, please." His performance was flawless again. Controlled breathing, measured tone, concerned husband expression. The same man who charmed investors, judges, reporters, and politicians for years. The same man nobody would ever imagine capable of murder. Except now, Elena had finally seen the real version underneath. The officers searched the house for nearly an hour. Richard remained calm through all of it. Too calm. That bothered Elena more than the accusation itself, because it meant he already had a plan. And Richard never moved without a plan. Finally, Officer Daniels returned downstairs. "We'll need both of you to come to the station for formal statements." Richard nodded. "Of course." Then he turned toward Elena with fake sadness. "I never wanted this." Elena almost laughed. Instead, she asked quietly, "Do you remember our anniversary in Vermont?" Richard frowned slightly, caught off guard. "What?" "The cabin by the lake." Elena continued calmly. "You told me trust was the foundation of marriage." Officer Daniels shifted awkwardly. Richard's jaw tightened. "This isn't the time." "No," Elena agreed softly. "I guess that time passed 3 months ago." Richard's eyes darkened instantly, and Elena knew something important. He was close to breaking again. At the station, detectives separated them into different rooms. Elena sat silently under bright fluorescent lights while Detective Harris reviewed documents across the table. "Mrs. Holloway," he said carefully, "your husband claims you became emotionally unstable recently." Elena smiled faintly. Convenient timing. "He says you accused him of cheating without evidence." "He was cheating. Can you prove that?" Elena leaned back slowly. "No." Detective Harris watched her closely. "You seem remarkably calm for someone accused of attempted murder." That question almost made her laugh. "Calm? No. Exhausted. There's a difference." Meanwhile, in the next room, Richard performed beautifully. He described Elena as paranoid, emotional, withdrawn. He even cried once. Just enough. Not too much. Exactly the amount believable men cry when pretending innocence. And for a while, it worked. Narrator. Because the most dangerous liars are the ones who understand human sympathy. And Richard Holloway understood it perfectly. But what he didn't understand was how carefully Elena had been preparing for this moment. 3 hours later, Detective Harris returned holding a folder. His expression had changed. "Mrs. Holloway," he said slowly, "we reviewed your husband's medical records." Elena said nothing. "The toxicology results are unusual." "How so?" "The poison entered his bloodstream consistently over several months." Elena tilted her head slightly. "And?" Detective Harris opened the folder. "The concentration levels suggest voluntary ingestion." Silence filled the room. Then Elena finally spoke. "Voluntary." The detective nodded carefully. "In simple terms, the evidence suggests he repeatedly drank it himself." For the first time that day, Elena felt the pressure leave her chest. Not relief completely, but enough to breathe again. At that same moment, Richard sat alone in interrogation room 2, and panic was slowly destroying him. Because Detective Collins had just asked one simple question. Mr. Holloway, if your wife poisoned you. He slid the toxicology report across the table. Why are there no traces of poison in her system? Richard froze. Just for a second. But that second was enough. Everything started collapsing after that. Fast. Detectives pulled financial records, insurance documents, phone logs between Richard and Amanda, hotel reservations, deleted emails. Then came the security footage. Not clear enough to show the cup swaps directly, but enough to show something disturbing. Every single night, Richard prepared the tea personally. No exceptions. No opportunity for Elena to poison only his cups separately. And suddenly Richard's story stopped making sense. Amanda cracked first. She always was the weaker one. After 6 hours of questioning, she finally broke down crying. I didn't think he'd actually kill her, she shouted. Detectives exchanged glances immediately. Amanda covered her mouth too late. Because now they had what they needed. Conspiracy, intent, motive. And just like that, the powerful man who spent years controlling everyone around him finally lost control of the story. Elena saw Richard one final time before his arrest. The hallway outside the interrogation rooms felt cold and strangely quiet. Richard stood in handcuffs between two officers. His expensive suit hung loosely now after months of weight loss. He looked older, smaller, human, but his eyes still carried anger. Dangerous anger. You ruined everything, he whispered as officers paused beside her. Elena looked at him calmly. No, Richard. She stepped closer. You did. Richard's jaw tightened. I loved you. That almost hurt more than the poison. Because somewhere deep inside, he probably believed it. In his own broken way. Elena shook her head slowly. No, you loved ownership. Richard stared at her silently. Then for the first time since all of this began, his confidence disappeared completely. What happens to me now? He asked quietly. Elena answered honestly. The same thing you wanted to happen to me. Weeks later, the story exploded across national news. Billionaire investor accused in slow poisoning plot. Every network covered it. Every newspaper dissected it. People became obsessed with one detail above all else. The teacups. America couldn't stop talking about the woman who survived by quietly switching 2 porcelain cups every night for 3 months. Some called her brilliant. Others called her ruthless. But everyone agreed on one thing. Richard Holloway poisoned himself. And yet, the most haunting part of this story wasn't revenge. It was trust. Because the person most capable of destroying you is often the person who already knows exactly how you live. Your habits, your routines, your weaknesses, your blind spots. Richard believed Elena was weak because she loved him. That was his fatal mistake. 3 months later, Elena returned to the mansion one final time to collect the last of her belongings. The house felt hollow now, silent, like a museum of a dead marriage. She walked slowly into the kitchen and stopped. 2 porcelain teacups still sat neatly beside the stove, exactly where they always had been. Elena stared at them for a long moment, then quietly laughed to herself. Not because anything was funny, but because survival changes people. The old Elena would have cried. This Elena simply understood. Some betrayals don't break you. They reveal you. Her phone buzzed suddenly. A text from an unknown number. You should have died instead. Elena stared at the message, then calmly deleted it. Because after surviving Richard Holloway, nothing scared her anymore. 1 year later, Richard accepted a plea deal to avoid trial. Attempted murder, fraud, conspiracy. Amanda testified against him in exchange for reduced charges. And just like that, the empire Richard spent 20 years building disappeared forever. Not through business failure, not through competitors, not through bad luck, but through his own greed. Meanwhile, Elena quietly rebuilt her life far away from cameras and headlines. No interviews, no book deals, no television appearances, just peace. Real peace. The kind money never bought inside that mansion. And every evening around 9:15 p.m., she made herself a single cup of chamomile tea. 1 cup, never 2. Narrator. Because in the end, the deadliest poison in that house was never inside the tea. It was betrayal. And betrayal has destroyed far more people than any toxin ever could. If this story shocked you, comment karma below. And tell me honestly, at what point would you have exposed Richard? The first night? Or would you have done exactly what Elena did? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more psychological revenge stories inspired by real human behavior. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters don't hide in the dark. They sleep beside you.